to economic recovery and development. Hopefully you will agree with me that our team did exceptionally good against an almost entrenched negative sentiment. America is an important trading partner and the second largest partner by trade volumes. I mean, you would also have to bear with us that the 45th and 47th President of the United States is quite an interesting character. We are quite elated that the discussions that ensued in the Oval Office were quite instrumental in building economic and diplomatic ties, or strengthening economic and diplomatic ties between Washington and Pretoria. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa has always understood that protectionist trade policies can and will pose challenges not only to our growth ambitions, but to global growth as well. In this regard, we've always advocated for a multilateral trading system that is fair and equitable, one that allows developing nations like ours to compete on a level playing field. Our participation in international forums such as the G20 and the World Trade Organization underscores the commitment to fostering a rule-based trading environment that promotes sustainable development. Of course, the world changes rapidly. We are thus mindful of these shifting dynamics of global trade. Our government continues to strengthen economic ties with both emerging and developing markets, remaining vigilant in protecting our interests while embracing opportunities for collaboration. Our approach to economic diplomacy is guided by the principles of solidarity and mutual benefit, ensuring that South Africa remains a competitive player in the global economy. Let me veer off from my speech for just a minute and say that one of the take-homes that we would have observed in the discussions that unfolded in the global discussions that ensued in the Oval Office yesterday was really about, it's not really about whether there is white genocide or not, because the myth of a white genocide in South Africa is non-existent. But we must have a reflection on the impact of crime on our economy. And I'm saying I had an opportunity to attend a working visit by the president in the UK last year. And leading among the concerns raised by investors was crime, especially violent crime. Yesterday, when the Minister of Finance delivered his speech, he alluded to the fact that there's considerable strides made in making sure that the NPA, through the Asset Forfeiture Unit, obtains warrants that would necessitate that South Africa and the South African government in particular, and victims of state capture, are able to see good through the recovery of billions of rands, which are proceeds of crime. So there's some effort, which is considerable in dealing with matters that are related to white-collar crime. But I think we need to join efforts, both as the private sector and the public sector, to intensify our fight against crime. I don't think, colleagues, that crime should be a government preoccupation. In fact, I think it must become a societal preoccupation. No one wants to invest in a country that has got so much crime engulfing its communities, engulfing its operations, engulfing its ability to create a nation that has much more bigger respect for the rule of law. So I'm saying this is one of the discussions that, as we reflect on the discussions that ensued in the global office, we must have a self-reflection as a country. To what extent have we committed ourselves to fighting crime? To what extent do we see crime as an impediment to economic growth? To what extent do we see crime as an impediment to nation building? To what extent do we see crime as an impediment to building a prosperous future for our kids? To what extent do we see crime as an embodiment, as an impediment to building a future where young people will be able to thrive and play a meaningful role in the mainstream economy? These are difficult questions that I think we must reflect on. And I think this is an opportunity for that self-reflection. I don't think that the issue of crime really relies on interventions from our global partners. But I think it mainly and largely relies on our collective ability as a nation to confront vexing issues about how we want to handle crime in South Africa. Only this week I visited, because part of my delegations as a deputy minister is government communications. So I have an opportunity to work with community media. And on the 18th of February this year, one journalist, Aserin Ndlovu, and his partner, Zora Mdluli, went missing. And in the aftermath of our visit to the family a little while ago, I think about 3 weeks ago, the bodies of these missing persons were discovered. Although there has been no direct match with respect to DNA, but these bodies are believed to be the ones of Ndlovu and his partner. So these are violent crimes that continue to engulf our nation, and a much bigger discussion needs to ensue in this regard. I'm happy that you have linked and centered sustainable development goals such that your business goals are aligned to social good. Together we can build a South Africa that is not only economically prosperous, but also socially just. As you swing for sustainable development goals, you understand that the investment that you make are not just a financial commitments, but demonstrate a partnership in shaping a brighter future for all South Africans. Ladies and gentlemen, public-private sector partnerships play a crucial role in achieving national development goals, particularly in the context of South Africa's economic landscape. These partnerships leverage the strength of both the public and private sector to address pressing infrastructure needs, enhance service delivery, and promote sustainable economic growth. Next week, at the Sustainable Infrastructure Symposium of South Africa, which is called SID SSA, the President will be launching the strategic infrastructure projects that are catalytic to our economic development. We've identified infrastructure development as a key frontier of our economic development and growth. In this regard, our National Development Plan, stated above, is to achieve the gross fixed capital formation of 30% to GDP. However, our fixed investment level hovers at around 15.6% to GDP. Thus, a funding gap exists between our goal and deployed capital in terms of executed projects. This signals a great opportunity for investment and deployment of capital from both the private and public sector. South Africa needs an extra $85.6 billion worth of private sector investment over the remaining years of the 2030 target bound. For its part, the public sector, through the budget vote that the Minister of Finance presented in Parliament yesterday, makes a provision of 1 trillion rand for critical infrastructure in the 2025-2026 financial year. I think here, government is making a commitment that it will invest 1 trillion rand within the medium term towards infrastructure development in South Africa. The worry is not whether the deployment of this investment is adequate enough to resolve these challenges that infrastructure in South Africa. You would know that Africa is a gateway to Africa. So the development of our infrastructure is quite key if we really want to build an Africa that is economically prosperous. And that is why the discussions that should be unfolding, even amongst government and of course, to some extent, the private sector, is whether or not the deployed investment will achieve what its intentions. And this is a worrisome discussion because you and I know for a fact that there is a corrupt and a corruptee relationship. So whilst government may not be doing enough to make sure that it monitors its investment, and whilst government may have shortfalls with respect to making sure that this investment is, or that there's return for investment, the question remains is whether the private sector is keen to make sure that there is value for money in the investment of these 1 trillion rands over the medium term. And this is one discussion that we should have, because the building of a prosperous South Africa relies on our collective effort to make sure that we invest in the infrastructure of South Africa wisely, but that there is also, as I said, there is value for money in how these catalytic projects are going to be implemented. So there's no debate about government commitment to invest in infrastructure projects. The worrisome factor, as I said, is whether the deployment of these resources will be used optimally to deal with the vexing challenges that are related to infrastructure in South Africa. A program director, we need your innovative thinking to raise money together with government and conclude public-private partnerships to deliver critical economic infrastructure projects. We all know how and might appreciate how our public finances are constrained. Therefore, innovative solutions to deliver projects that are fiscally neutral cannot be overstated. And I'm sure this was also regurgitated yesterday by the Minister of Finance when he made mention of the fact that we need to look beyond the fiscus to invest in our infrastructure. And that is why the Minister of Finance has alluded to the fact that they are looking, as Treasury, they are looking at business case where pension funds could also be used to invest in infrastructure development. Hopefully, as partnership, you will inspire our members and stakeholders to initiate PPP initiatives linked to SDGs to ensure that development projects are holistic and inclusive. There is great scope and opportunity in areas of clean water, affordable and clean energy, and sustainable cities and communities. These projects can and will create a more resilient and sustainable future for our economy and our people. I wish you well as you swing for goals and hope to see some of the brands here involved in key economic infrastructure projects in partnership with the public sector. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. And no doubt, thank you for the well wishes. So I think that let's get going with the panel discussion, just so that we can get as much out of this as is possible. I know that you guys also have a specific time where your game needs to get started, so let's make sure that we don't take away too much from that time. And so leading us in the discussion, following on the keynote address from the Deputy Minister, a discussion on navigating change, of course, the dialogue of unity, geopolitics, and economic futures. Okay. And you know what, I think that we'll also need mics for the delegates as they come through. Right. I'd like to ask the following speakers to join me on stage, beginning with Ms. Benita Senyatsi, Technical Director over at Imperial Logistics. Okay. The lovely thing about, I don't know if it's lovely actually, Benita is essentially the only technical director at Imperial Logistics. That may be changing soon, but it also just shows to the conversation around inclusive growth that we need to have. More female engineers need to enter the space, but it's an area that she's passionate about, and she's going to tell us a little bit more. A very smart lady who has an MBA from Japan and an academic distinction from UJ and Gibbs. So, konnichiwa, ma'am. We also have Mzwandile Buthelezi, interim CEO of the Dirisano Construction Fund. You were referenced. The fund was referenced, I believe. But we look forward to your, oh, where am I sitting there? I think I'm sitting there, sorry, sir. But we do look forward to your insights on government, your insights on construction policy and finance. Mzwandile having been a major contributor to various initiatives, including the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, as well as Infrastructure South Africa. So we'll hear a little bit more about this 1 trillion rand infrastructure opportunity that the Deputy Minister made reference of. And last but not least, can we give Ashley Niko Mabasa a warm welcome as well. He is Executive Mayor. Sorry, Executive Manager. But you know, so my other name is Bonso, and it means vision to show. So who knows, maybe it's, you know, but right now, Executive Manager for the Office of the Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources and Petroleum, bringing obviously a very nice background in terms of government strategy and ESG advisory. My brother at the back mentioned renewable energies, and my sister also climate action, which has to be weaved in when we think about business right now. And this is an opportunity for you guys also to engage. Any of the speakers or any of the speakers on stage, or the speakers that you have heard from, should you have questions, we'll make sure that we leave ample time for that. I think I'd like to begin with my thoughts on what happened yesterday in Washington in the Oval Office. I mean, if there was ever a reason for me to be motivated to really get going with learning how to play golf, it was what happened yesterday. I mean, did you guys see the delegation that was called on to essentially save South Africa's relationship with very key strategic partners? We love the rugby boys for uniting us, especially when sometimes things get difficult culturally. But the people that saved or can potentially save us in terms of business relation is the golfers. And I think that's why they call it the business sport. So I'll be joining you in future games, I'm sure. But key takeaways from that engagement. Obviously, the world is watching what is happening in South Africa. We matter. Unfortunately, when it does come to news of most kinds, it's the negative news that spreads. And it's the negative news that was shown yesterday. But the world is watching us, we matter. It is significant that a South African president was the first president on the continent to get a seating with the current administration in the US. So South Africa certainly matters, and it has a role to play in the global stage. The Deputy Minister did make reference of crime, and crime is the root of a lot of evil that is happening in this country right now, and particularly the evil that is driving the unemployment situation, inequality, and poverty. We need to fix that, and all of us need to play a role in fixing that. But also, if you saw what happened yesterday, fixing South Africa is obviously, it's not a solo mission, it's a team sport. And we heard government, we saw business, and we saw labor all trying to play their part. But if we reflect on that, and also reflect on the budget, as was mentioned, maybe Mzwandile, I'll ask you, because we have heard about a lot of money going into infrastructure before, billions and billions. Maybe this time is because we're in the trillions, but we've heard about it before. And as the Deputy Minister said, the proof has been in the return on the investment, and the return on the investment has not been attractive, so if you allow me to speak frankly. And so I'd like your take on the budget, not to critique it, but maybe to show us in your space, as a CEO in a very difficult industry, where you are seeing opportunity for not only yourself, as the Tirisano Construction Fund, of course, but players who are in this room who could be in a sector like yours, a related sector, to capitalize on based on how this government is looking to grow the economy. So.
Thanks, Program Director. Am I audible? DM, good morning. And Program Director, thank you.
Oh, it's Fifi.
DM Morolong, good morning, and all the delegates in the room. I think maybe, Program Director, let me start by explaining what this Tirisano Construction Fund is, because many a time, wherever I go, I'm talking about the Tirisano Construction Fund. And the question is, what is this Tirisano Construction Fund? You'll remember towards 2010, the Soccer World Cup, that with the infrastructure that was being built, the stadia, GFP and Gauteng and others, what then got to happen after was that the Competition Commission caught wind of the collusion that was happening in the construction industry. That the big construction companies basically would sit around the table and decide that this project is coming to you, do your numbers, then share your numbers with us so that when we put in our bids, they are above yours and you become automatically the lowest bidder. What then happened was that there were those discussions between the construction companies and government, and ultimately in 2016, there was a settlement agreement that was reached between government and the construction companies. And that settlement agreement, part of it was that there needs to be a fund that is going to be established, and this fund is going to be, you construction companies, you are going to pay fines into this fund, and this fund is going to be used to boost transformation and development in the construction industry, especially focusing on emerging black contractors. And that fund then became the Tirisano Construction Fund that was established officially in 2017. And it runs 7 programs. I think we can discuss it at a later stage. But I think coming to the budget, it's an opportunity. But I think also the question is who's benefiting from this budget in the infrastructure space. And the DM also mentioned the Transformation Fund, and I think that is what is also going to be of interest to colleagues in the room, that yes, we've seen billions being spent. I mean, you look at the Mthentu Bridge down in the Eastern Cape, you drive on the N3 has been in construction for a long time, but what companies are there in that space? And I think the Tirisano Construction Fund, in partnership with the Transformation Fund that has been established, have a role to play in that. Exactly that, the transformation, that actually it needs to be black businesses that are owned by black people and managed by black people that get to benefit in that space. And what are the problems in the space that we operate in? You find that emerging black contractors, they are struggling with working capital. They are struggling with guarantees. They are struggling, yes, you have a contract, but you need the yellow machines. Where do you get the yellow machines from? I think then that way the Tirisano Construction Fund can be able to come in partnership with the Transformation Fund that the DM also mentioned, to make sure that black people are the ones that are benefiting in the space.
Okay.
There's
so,
also...
So I want to, as I said, the world is watching us. And right now, some people in the world, and maybe others haven't even said, they are concerned about laws that seem to benefit a particular race. And you're talking about black people, and I hear you. But the world is watching us. And I'm wondering what's going to happen when our president does come from Washington, and maybe if there's going to be a dilution on empowerment, as in what was quoted yesterday was the former president Nelson Mandela, in which he said that, you know, no race should be one above one another. I understand the context that South Africa is working in terms of we have to address a lot of wrongs that were done in the past. But I do wonder whether the focus going forward is going to be as transparently on race as has been the case. I wonder. But what I wanted to ask is that I also believe in a bottom-up approach. And you spoke about the Tirisano Fund, what it was, how it came to be, what it was intended to do. You highlighted on the infrastructure portion in the budget, and you also made reference to the Transformation Fund. If we take a bottom-up approach kind of view, how can companies that are in that space position themselves to better access funds such as yours, or funds such as the Transformation Fund when things are established? In your view, what can these companies do to equip and arm themselves?
Look, the argument that we've been making also is that, yes, construction companies, emerging construction companies struggle with working capital, they struggle with guarantees, but you can't give them working capital and off you go and implement. You need to give them proper support in terms of mentorship as well. And there's a program that Sunral is going to be launching soon, which is the Contractor Development Program, which is speaking to exactly this. And they've requested to partner with the Tirisano Construction Fund, because on the side of Sunral, what legislation allows them to do is to pay for the work done. But the hand-holding, who's doing that and who's paying for that? And that's where the Tirisano Construction Fund also comes in.
Okay.
So that hand-holding is necessary so that our contractors that we are supporting actually get to succeed.
Okay, okay, thank you. I don't like to mention the phone issue because I feel like most of us are on the same page, but for the colleagues who haven't remembered to maybe put their phone on silent, although that didn't sound like a ring, that sounded like someone's on TikTok, sorry. But if you can just put the volume down for us, just not to distract the speakers for their words. A related sector, logistics. Important sector, a difficult sector it has been. Maybe give us your takeaways about the budget in terms of the opportunities you think it is representing or it's presenting for individuals who might be in the logistics space or who may need to access logistics for this space and the goods that they're in.
Thank you, Fifi. Dumelang, everybody.
Dumela.
Deputy Minister, my fellow panelists. So, Fifi, within the logistics space, I think there's been a vast number of challenges. And the challenges, stemming, be it from, and I think the DM touched on crime, we are really affected by crime in the sense that moving of goods, the risk of the looting. We know that every time there's an unrest, the truckers fall victim whereby the product gets looted. So it is key for us to consider what was being said and what is going to then be injected into the logistics and transporting sector from a budget point. Now, what one can look at from a solution base, I think it's key to take into account the dilapidated infrastructure that we have. We've seen the impact of the falling of the rail infrastructure from moving freight and how that has led to an increase in the trucks on the road. And you can see trucks, what they've done to the roads. So there's congestion, and with that being the case, it regresses because then, it puts the risk out there. I think one of the things that we also never really talk much about within the logistics space is the moving of cargo via air. I think, not to touch on the SAA part, but I think as a logistics space, we really took a knock because now if we want to grow into the regional space, and as South Africa being the gateway into the rest of Africa, the absence of those kind of logistics infrastructure to support private sectors and to partner with government really results in elements of frustrations. Be it as it may, whatever has led to the fall of these networks that we use, it's something that we as private sector are open to engaging with government to say, how do we then revive those fallen institutions? Because in the absence of us injecting funds and resources and leveraging on the public-private partnership, we are losing market share. A lot of international and also African players have come in and eaten our own market share in our backyard. So that means money is going away. It means we are not sustaining ourselves. And I think those are conversations to be had.
We can tariff them.
No, so get into the tariff thing. Let's take the ports. We do know that, the Durban port was really one of the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere. But now we've got the port of Namibia. The port of Namibia in Walvis Bay and also the port of Maputo. You can understand that for international investors, if they're seeing South Africa not being stable with all the supporting infrastructure, it's easy to dock a ship from Asia to the port of Maputo, go up to Malawi, to the rest of Africa. We are no longer the only way. And I think that's something that we need to understand, that our neighbors are starting to be, I'm going to say, an economic threat, even though their instability also hinders us being a lucrative entry point into Africa, but we are also not doing justice to ourselves by just letting things fall apart.
How do we change things, I suppose? Because again, going on to opportunities, because I'm very solutions orientated. I've got a friend who is in the steel business, and she makes the most amazing things. Maybe she'll be a Carol Boys of the future. The cutlery, the buckets for your shampoo or the beers, beautiful, beautiful things. You know, she told me, she says that she's about to open up a shop in Egypt. She's in steel, although the steel industry is difficult, but she's in steel. So let's talk opportunities. So I want to know, you've been in the logistics space for a very, very long time. For those who are in a related space or who are looking to get in right now, what are you telling them about how to better access the market and capitalize the opportunity, and especially the women who are too few in the industry?
Yes, so there really are few women. It is still male-dominated. I think, just to digress a bit, I think, as women, we can learn a lot from the boys' club because they always boost each other up. But I always say it takes one good man to advocate for a woman and give her a seat at the table or just back her up. So we really do need our guys in industry to back up the up-and-coming women within the spaces. Now, talking about where opportunities are, I think the logistics space and the transportation and warehousing, it is pretty set, and the freight space. However, opportunities come where I think there's an opportunity for local sourcing of a lot of parts, local sourcing of facilities that we need to use. A lot of the things are being imported and they're expensive. So the up-and-coming SMMEs that do operate within the manufacturing space, as logistics space, I think we pretty much are a profit-driven set private sector, but we are open to engaging with government whereby they can assist in terms of us sourcing stuff locally. And by sourcing locally, we tend to retain the money internally, and we also then get to uplift. It cuts down on waiting time when you're waiting for parts or waiting for things to come into the country. It also cuts down on the costs. So there's a time, there's a money factor, and there's ease of customization for the South African space, because a lot of the things that we do use were made for the European market or Northern African market. So we just buy ready-made goods and we try and make them work for us. So there is opportunities that can come from these engagements where we then say, okay, not only approaching the private sector in isolation, but hand in hand with government to say, we would be the end users. Can you enable these people? We can tell you our shopping list. We can guide the guys in terms of what we want, but help them. And I think hearing about the available funds that are out there, I think there's conversations to be had from there.
100%. So made in South Africa for South Africa, essentially, is what you're talking about. Ashley, representing the head of government from the Office of Mineral Resources and Petroleum, I must say one thing your minister is known for quite well is advocating for local business. And so I'm going to ask you to also advocate for a small business here. In terms of the budget key takeaways and in terms of the office that you represent, what can you tell us about where the opportunity does lie, in your view?
No, thank you so much, and thanks to the Deputy Minister for the insightful input or address, and to the fellow panelists. Morning, everyone. I think for me, broadly, I'm mostly trained as well as a consultant, and one of the things that mostly taught is two things, is that when the bridge collapses, first thing that you do, you must ask how the bridge was built, so that how you can diagnose the cracks of the problem. And the second one is that if you want to be a strong athlete, it means that you need to train yourself mentally, have a good nutrition, you need to go to the gym so you can be the best. So it's the same thing. So it's how do you address your problem, but how do you plan for the future? It's how do you boost yourself? How do you strengthen your systems? And what the colleagues was talking about, the infrastructure, and as well as the supply chain, which is the logistic, which is the part of it in the supply chain, the main, and the driver of the downstream of that integration, the vertical integration of any sector. it will be logistic, transporting of goods and all of that. But I think for me, when you say the budget, I think the key takeaway for me, it was one, everyone's happy about it. There was no tax increase. And also is to get a sense of how does a government, especially National Treasury, position itself to protect the supply side of the economy, and also how do they boost the productivity of the economy? Because South African productivity has been at the lower end, particularly because you can see with the high unemployment rate, and you can also see with Transnet not playing its part in terms of what you was talking about, the transporting of goods through the rail. We did a study at PwC, and we find that when we're doing the benchmarking to Rotterdam Port and Sennes, that in every stage of Transnet, they delay by 3 minutes, and compared to their counterpart. And that, within the business itself,
And time is money.
it's a lot of time, and it's money, as you're saying. But also, to go back to the budget, I think the budget addressed those key side of the economy, the supply side of the economy, to stabilize the grid, mostly the electricity side, which has been mostly the problem, that not getting the energy availability factor in the 70%. So now trying to make sure that they increase that, and I've heard the Minister of Energy, Dr. Sputler, speaking about the fund that will come into play to assist in terms of diversification of the renewable energy. And I think that's something that, as well as my brother Kwezi, I think you'll talk about it even more in terms of how we've seen more of the import in terms of the wind turbine and solars. And my concern mostly was, why are we putting tariffs on things that we don't produce locally? And at some point that makes things to be more expensive for the local consumers. And I think is that the budget, it's something that I would have expected it also to address. How do we move forward in terms of that? But with the infrastructure, it's a good posture. From 2013 to 2018, there was a decrease in terms of the infrastructure spend, but it was high from 2008 until 2013. But that also is a part of how the infrastructure, the manufacturing part has been going down from 21% to 12% from 1999 to today. So I think the budget is trying to resolve this particular problem that I mentioned. And I had a dinner with one of my friends who works in Treasury, and he was saying that there's two things about fiscal policy. One is that you must manage the government money. So it's about managing government money. When you get paid a salary, you need to manage it and see where you're paying the debt and all of the stuff and expenses, liabilities. But also there's a theoretical part. I think that's where South Africans are missing each other in terms of saying the budget, is it pro-poor, is it addressing our problem and all of that. So my overall view with the budget, I think, is more balanced and very happy in terms of how they're trying to protect the supply side of the economy and balance that.
And just lastly, before I open it up to the colleagues who might have questions, the just energy transition, because your portfolio is also a part of that as well, in terms of the ministry that you represent, and you did mention the Minister of Energy. What is your message to the colleagues in the room about sustainable business? I mean, we're here to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, and part of being in business right now is about thinking about a business that is sustainable and that ticks as many of those 17 goals as is possible. For your sector, what is your message about opportunity and how things can be done better?
Okay. I think one of the things that we've seen last week, the minister have launched what we call the critical mineral strategy for South Africa, and have identified 18 minerals to be critical for us, because we're looking in terms of the criticality of it to serve our economy. And one of the things that came out of it, which is the opportunities that since 2012, there's been a hype around critical minerals. And why critical minerals? Because they are key in terms of production, of manufacturing of EVs, energy vehicles. And if you look in terms of phones, yeah, that's what is happening. In fact, when you go to DRC, the battle for the cobalt. So, and if you look in terms of the vehicle, the engine combustion car, it only takes 35 kilograms of critical minerals And now with the EV car, it takes around 250 kilograms of critical minerals. And also importantly is that now we've seen in the automotive sector, they are forecasting that 1 into 4 cars that are bought now is EV. So I think that's an opportunity that is there in terms of the mining. How do we exploit ourselves in terms of the critical mineral, but also how do we enter in the whole vertical integration of the value chain of that critical mineral without stopping from getting the cracks of the mineral. Like transport industry itself, which is happened to be one of the biggest sector in terms of for this critical mineral transportation to ensure the value chain is moving. But also, the Europe have passed what we call the Critical Metal Act, saying that they will look in terms of if something is produced, they only limit each country, one country can have more than 65% of critical mineral on that product. So if the iPhone, which is made in Foxconn, is made, they will say, everything that in the iPhone must be said, this mineral come from where, and if it's more than 65%, one country, they don't allow it. So I think those are things that now it allows diversification and for us to think about that. And also I've learned a lot through now reading much about how these traders came about to say, you can make a lot of business and money out of not even owning direct commodity, but with trading of that commodity. And as a South Africa department, our department have created what we call the youth fund for minerals, which is 400 million for junior miners. And with that itself is that we're trying to open a space in terms of seeing how can we empower the underprivileged junior miners to enter the space, because the space itself is mostly dominated by the monopolies and of big conglomeration, and it's highly costly. So those are the opportunities that are there. But also, if you look in terms of the transition that is happening, though Trump is backfooting on it.
President Trump, I was
President
told.
Trump is backfooting on it.
This is being televised. This is important.
Yeah.
I don't want your visa status compromised.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So even though he's backfooting in terms of ESG, because he said the ESG is a greenwash, it's a scam, and all of that, but there's still a high consideration from companies, especially in their ESG funds, to fund things that are more related to ESG. Mining sector itself balkanized their funding to ESG. And what we did last time when we were still at PwC, we went to help the Mpumalanga municipalities, 18 municipalities, because they couldn't cope with this energy transition, especially in Komati when they closed the power station. And one of the things that we found is that there's a lot of opportunities within the agri-processing. And there's a lot of will from the banking sector and also the mining sector to fund communities to embark on the agri-processing. And that's when people are not taking part of it. And most of the thing within the agri-processing they don't see is that money is not within the primary sector. It will be within the tertiary and the secondary, because that's where there's trading, that's where there's what you produce is turned to the commodities.
So much essentially, and what I like, all three of you have just spoken about the opportunities within your sector. From construction, we've heard logistics, we've also heard agro-processing, we also heard mining and the just energy transition. I'm just mindful of time, because I know that we can go on, which is fantastic, on another platform and on another day. At this stage, I just want to know, colleagues, before you guys go and swing for your goals and your purpose, is there anyone who has a question before we wrap things up? For any of the panel members or any of the speakers who have addressed us? I'm singling you, Deputy Minister, without singling you. But I do know events like this, colleagues do like to engage with government as is possible. You guys are very busy and it's not always possible to get your ear. So yes, ma'am, there's a hand there and then there's a hand at the back there from the gentleman.
Thank you. Thank you to the speakers, including the Deputy Minister. I'm in education, so my passion is education. And I think that I am not, maybe one of the speakers can respond. I am not so sure if we are focusing on the pipeline and the supply, because the quality of education, we can say what we want. It's not great. But secondly, I think we're focusing on access to universities, which access is getting smaller. instead of looking at spaces like colleges that provide skills. So I'm wondering in each of the sectors, as we look at partnerships, what partnerships are they having in ensuring that that space is developed and that we're getting young people out that can actually do things?
Okay.
The second thing is, I agree again that crime is a big problem, but I also think that we do need to have a focused attention on corruption. Because one of the things that make us not get value for money is because of corruption. If you look at the COVID fund, how it ended, it's criminal.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Twaslani, and my last name is Twaslani as well.
Oh,
Yes. indeed.
iteration.
Absolutely. And I'm from the Ariobex group. And the Ariobex group, we are responsible for building the smart city in Randfontein. The construction is taking place as I speak to you, and people are moving in as I speak. Now, my boss said I should ask Mr. Buthelezi as whether he has, 2 billion to spare.
How much? 2 billion?
And how do we?
Is that 2 billion, sir?
Absolutely.
Rands or
And
dollars?
how do we access that money?
2 billion.
So that, he said, please put that question to him.
Not
and
even million, billion.
B, A-B.
Okay.
How do we access that money?
Okay.
So that is the question to Mr. Buthelezi.
All right. I like
Thank
it.
you very much.
I like it. Very direct. You know what you
Absolutely.
came here for, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other hand before we do take the responses? Yes, ma'am, with a beautiful smile.
Thank you so much. My name is Lebogang Mabunda, and I'm in the public sector in education. And perhaps let me start by assisting the lady at the back in terms of the pipeline. So what's happening in regards to your question is there new qualifications that colleagues may be aware of that involve work-integrated learning, so that learners, be it at the TVETs or community colleges, are prepared with skills that equip them to play specific role into the private sector. However, my question is different. Indeed, we've spoken about the people who are in business, SMMEs. We've made reference, the executive mayor to be, my apologies, junior minors. However, there is an element that we haven't addressed, those that are not in employment or education and training, the needs, as we call them, who are at the grassroots level. How do we see them benefiting from this transformation fund or all the programs that you have? Because these are people that do not have access to information like you and I. Thank you.
Starling. Information. But I get you. Maybe no more hands. No more hands. Okay, so maybe we get to answering. And I think that